We're in one of the craziest markets ever right now.
It's no surprise. It's no secret that the real estate market works in cycles.
The true path to wealth is buy and hold. It's not through flipping. Anyone that tells you it's easy and is fluffing you up about it is like completely full of, BS. I'm lazy and I don't have time for this.
Don't be afraid to build a team around you that's smarter than you are. And don't be afraid to put yourself in a room where you feel intimidated. Real estate is a get rich slow scheme.
Exactly.
Don't focus on the slow part, focus on the get rich part.
You're listening to Copeland Morgan Media, your source for investment property analysis, education, and advice. Find us online at copelandmorgan.com.
Welcome back, folks. I'm your host, Jeff Copeland, and I'm super excited to have with me on the show today, April Crossley. April is the founder and owner of Lazy Girl REI in Reading, Pennsylvania, and she's a self-described no BS educator who simplifies real estate investing. April, welcome.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. So we talked a little bit before we started recording about how I feel, we don't really know each other that well, but I feel like just from what I've read about you, we're sort of kindred spirits. And when it comes to educating our clients about real estate investing, I have a real passion for that. But before we dive into all the details, why don't you just kind of tell us a little bit about yourself? Tell us where you came from, how you got into real estate, and what path did you take to end up here today?
Sure. So I have been investing since 2004, but my degree is in biology. I worked in healthcare for 13 years, thought I wanted to be the CEO of a hospital. I was in school for my master's degree when I picked up a book on real estate investing called The 1 Minute Millionaire. And I was completely financially uneducated at all. I was working in healthcare, making good money, renting a house. Didn't know anything about buying a house. My husband had 2 small rental properties, and I picked up a book that was his when we were on vacation and started reading about people buying houses and renting them out. And then someone would pay off the mortgage and you would get to keep all the equity. And I was like, what? Like, who would do that? Why would someone pay off someone else's mortgage? And he's like, that's what you're doing for your landlord. And I was a great tenant, paid my rent early. I was like, wow. He's like, you should really buy a house. You make good money in healthcare. So bought that house, rented it out, kind of just like dabbled in real estate, took one of those really expensive, like $25,000 real estate courses, and started learning more and more about it, and dropped out of my master's program because I was like, well, I don't have time to become the CEO of a hospital. If I'm going to start diving into real estate, I can only learn real estate and I'm not going to do my master's. So that was the first time I gave my mom a heart attack. And then the second time was when I was 35, I was flipping just like 3 houses a year for 3 years in a row. And I was working in healthcare, and healthcare was kind of going downhill really quickly, like more of a business than it was about taking care of people. So I was like, I would go to work every day and cry, and you work really long hours and you're running your butt off in a hospital. So when I was 35 for my birthday, I was like, I'm retiring from healthcare and I'm going all in on real estate because I'm making just as much money in real estate flipping 3 houses a year as I am at my healthcare job working like a dog. So I say retired, but I basically just retired from healthcare into having a house flipping job. So was flipping houses, buying single family rental properties, and doing that for a couple of years, and then realized I really did create another job for myself, and got to the point where I was like, I'm quitting real estate. I'm not going to do this anymore. It's too overwhelming. But I gave up my healthcare license. So I was like, I couldn't go back to that.
You burned the bridge.
I definitely burned the bridge. I didn't want any kind of like security blanket should I need to go back. I just wanted to cut all ties so that I would keep going forward. And I really had to learn like how to get out of my flipping business so I had time to do bigger things. And that really came from like partnering and joining a mastermind group and making time for that because I wasn't so consumed with like my flipping business anymore. so now I still have my flip business, but I have a partner in it, and I do wholesaling, and we buy small multifamily apartment buildings. And I'm in Tennessee right now with my partner that I bought a mobile home park with, and I co-GP on syndications and raise capital for buildings and do like a whole, pretty much everything, and do private lending to flippers and passively into syndication. So I do a little bit of everything real estate related now.
Yeah, you've got your fingers in a lot of pies, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you also teach other people how to do it.
Yeah. And mostly newbies. Like I love teaching newbies how to get started, just because I feel like, that's where you need the most help, is like when you're first getting into it, and, when I started in it, I had nothing. It's not like I had money to do a deal. I didn't have any money. We used someone else's money and partnered to get into a deal. So it has completely changed my life. So I like to show people that it can completely change your life. Like you can have nothing and then start flipping houses and buying rentals, and 7 years from now be in a completely different position. I'm not saying it's going to be an easy 7 years. Like I tell people, if anyone that tells you it's easy and is fluffing you up about it is like completely full of, BS. So I don't want to swear on your podcast, sure. But, but I tell people, like, just hang on. If you can just hang on for us, when we started buying single family rentals, eventually we looked back at our portfolio and we sold our single families and kept our multis because our single families didn't perform as well. I'm not saying it's like that in every market by any means. Everything you have to look at on a micro level within a market. But I found that when we held on to something for like 7 years is when we really started to see the payoff from that. Like as far as we've built up enough equity and now we're tapping into that equity, or we're selling the house. And what we did was sold those houses, pulled the equity out, and then started private lending that equity, because I'm like, man, I'm getting old. I don't have the energy to be like, flipping and wholesaling. That's a hustle. There's a lot of like things you have to do in those businesses and bases you have to cover. And I don't want to hustle like that. Everybody talks about financial freedom and passive investing. And I'm like, where is the freedom? Where's the freedom? Like I left my job and I got the financial part, but I had no freedom at all.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think so many people, myself included, can relate to what you're saying. And, I tell people all the time, real estate is a get rich slow scheme. Exactly. Don't focus on the slow part, focus on the get rich part.
Yeah.
And you're right. It's not going to happen next week or probably not even next year. But if you're already grinding, if you're already working 40, 68 hours a week for somebody else, why not start doing that for yourself? And then in 5 to 10 years, you'll see just a tremendous transformation.
Yeah.
I wanted to go back to a couple of things that you touched on, because I think a lot of people will relate to this. And I'm sure we have a wide variety of listeners, but some of them are probably younger people in their 20s who are interested in getting into real estate, but are also fearful. And I remember being there. I remember when my wife and I bought our first primary residence. We were in our 20s, and she had owned a home before, so she wasn't at all fearful of the concept of buying a house. But me, I was spending, I don't know, $1,000 a month on rent or whatever it was back then. But the idea of having and it was, I think $100,000 we paid for our house back in the 90s. Yeah. But the idea of owing someone $100,000 just kind of freaked me out. I mean, I didn't come from wealth. I grew up, relatively poor. And here I am now in my 20s renting an apartment. And the idea of having an $80,000 or $100,000 debt, it really just kind of freaked me out. And I think you have to kind of flip the tables and understand that no, what your part is the equity, and understanding the difference between debt and equity, and that mindset shift, I think is critical. And you mentioned that you went through something very similar when you were renting, and somebody finally sat you down and explained to you, no, you're just paying off your landlord's mortgage.
Yeah. And then he's going to be able to keep all that. My husband's like, you've probably more than paid off his mortgage. And of course he loves you and doesn't want you to leave. Like, you're more than paying off his mortgage. And then what he's going to do is he's going to sell this house. He's going to keep that big chunk of money, and you're going to move on and rent something else and do the same thing for someone else. So I was like, okay, how do I become that person? Like, how do I how do I buy the house? I didn't know anything about mortgages or buying a house or pre-qualifying. I didn't know anything. I was just like, how do I become that person that has the house and then someone else pays off my mortgage? Because that sounds like a really good deal. And I want to keep all that equity and make all that money. And then that's when I just started reading more books and learning more and more about real estate investing.
Yeah. And I think you'll probably agree with me here. It's not that hard. It's not that complicated. And I think that's something that you and I, something that you and I share is we want to simplify it, just simplify it down to the basics. What do you need to know to get this done? And if you focus on that and you stay focused on it for, some period of time, you'll be successful in real estate.
Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to touch on was that transition from the corporate world to being a full-time real estate investor. I've been there. I know many of our listeners are there in that they're still working full-time in that W-2 job. And it's tough to give that up, especially when you're trying to qualify for mortgages and build your real estate portfolio. But it's really hard to know, when am I at that tipping point when it's actually smarter to dive off into the deep end and get into real estate full-time and scale that up so much more quickly than you can if you're devoting 40 hours a week to somebody else. And I just wonder, what are your thoughts on that? You've been there, you've done that, as have I, but what pushed you over the edge? How did you make that decision?
Yeah, I feel like I tell people, you'll know when it's time. You'll just know, like, you'll feel at peace with it. But that's not saying you won't be scared. You're always going to be scared. Any major step you take to that next level in life, you're going to be scared. And we live in this world right now that tells us if you do what you love, you're going to love it. You're always going to feel so amazing and be positive. It's just not true. It's not true. You're going to feel scared, and that's okay, but you have to push through feeling scared. So for me, I knew that to get my cash, the bank loved doing cash out refinances for us on single family rentals, because they were like, oh, you have a full-time job in healthcare, you're making great money, plus you're flipping houses, you're basically making another salary flipping houses, plus you have other rental properties. Cash out refinance, no problem. But I knew when I left my healthcare job, I had to basically, the bank only looks at things in their little box. So I had to replace my job with another job. So that's why I was flipping houses for 3 years in a row consistently before I took the jump and left my job, because I know the true path to wealth is buy and hold. It's not through flipping. So, and that just came from reading books and stuff. So I was like, so in order to do that BRRRR strategy, I need to show them, yes, I left my healthcare job, but I've had this other job flipping houses in this LLC for 3 years now, and I'm still consistently doing that. So I should still qualify for my cash out refinances. So that transition was very easy. The mental part of leaving healthcare was not so easy. I mean, I was literally at the point where I was crying going into work just based on my dissatisfaction with the healthcare world. It wasn't the same as when I got into it. And my husband just point blank said to me the one day, if you left your healthcare job, which you can do because you're making just as much money flipping houses, you wouldn't have to feel like this going into work, and you could put more time into real estate and accomplish more things. So I was like, that is really true. So I just made sure I had some money in the bank and I was still flipping houses. So I was kind of in a secure position to leave my job. And then when I left, it was like, wham, now I work by myself. I don't have the camaraderie of having the people in healthcare that I worked with basically were like my friends, plus my coworkers, plus my social life, plus everything. I lost all of that. I'd go back, they'd want me to come back to the hospital and visit them and talk to them. And they would all be like, you're going to be back in 6 months. I was like, I'm really not coming back. Just my mentality was completely different from their mentality. And it was so clear to me at that point in time. So I almost went through, I tell people, a grieving period for a year where I had to find myself and find other people in real estate, because I stepped outside my comfort zone, basically, and left everyone and everything I knew to be normal for a new normal.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of great little nuggets in there that I want to kind of touch on. One is that idea of your job making you unhappy, unhealthy, and just miserable. I have been there in more than one full-time job, and not only that, but the stress of trying to be a real estate investor or a real estate agent or both on the side and wear these multiple hats. Who am I today? And trying to, sneak out an hour early because you got to go look at a house or go looking at houses on your lunch break. And it's just a stressful way to live. And it is such a great feeling when you can just be, April, the real estate investor, or Jeff, the real estate broker, and not have to please anybody else.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I really loved, and I haven't really heard somebody put it so simply, is plan on grinding for 3 years. The first year is going to be the buildup, and then you're going to need 2 years of success, of proven business model. And then you can look back on those 2 years, the final 2 years of the 3, and that is your trailing 2 years tax returns for everything else that you want to do in terms of real estate financing. And so if you're on the precipice, if you're thinking about making the leap, there are going to be some long days and long hours. You're going to work hard. There are going to be some blood, some sweat, and some tears. But if you're willing to do it for 3 years, that can be the launch point. And I think that's such a simple way to package it, and it makes so much sense.
Yeah. And it's hard to get people to see that. I call it sacrifice. Like, I tell people this isn't going to come without sacrifice and tears and pain and hard work and loss of sleep, and nothing great comes without great sacrifice. But if I could show you, I mean, if you would have asked me when I was 18 years old, when you're 42, you will sell your house and travel the United States for a year in your RV with your husband, I would have been like, you're so funny. I'm going to work till I'm 65 and then retire, maybe when I'm 65. But when I was 42, that's exactly what we did. We're like, we're going to sell our house. We're going to go travel around the country. Why? Because we can. Because we can. Like, our friends were like, why would you do this? And we're like, because we can. They're like, oh, lucky you. I'm like, lucky me, worked full-time in healthcare and basically full-time in real estate for years, busting my butt to get to this point.
Nothing pisses me off more than somebody telling me how lucky I am, because I'm like, I have never been given a dime. I have worked my tail off for every penny. And the fact that I choose to take a trip or a vacation or do something with my family is because I earned every penny of that through blood, sweat, tears, hard work, grinding at a W-2 job for decades, grinding in real estate for many years after that. So don't tell me I'm lucky. I've earned it. And I know you have too.
Right. And it's the whole like delayed gratification. Like, when I talk to people about generational wealth, and they're like, what can you teach your kids to make sure they care for generational wealth? I'm like, delayed gratification is huge. Like, when my friends were getting married and buying huge $450,000 houses with 5 bedrooms and 3 full baths and all the things, because that's what they wanted. And that's what life looked like, was being married and having kids and like having this big house. I was buying this junker house that looked like complete hell and needed total rehab. And then I moved into it and lived in that junker house for 2 years while I fixed it up. Then I turned it into a rental, moved out, bought another junker house, lived there while so my friends would be like, ew, your bathroom like has pink tile and a pink tub. I'm like, yeah, but it's going to make a great rental.
Yeah,
someday.
But I have $100,000 of equity in my pink tile.
Exactly. So like, did I always have the house, that my dream house and my dream this and dream that? No, but delayed gratification for like the bigger picture of not having to work for the rest of my life. Yeah.
Yeah, it's all about those priorities. But I also want to point out for our listeners that don't feel like it's too late just because you're in your 40s or 50s or 60s or whatever. You can always start this transition. And I think that's the beauty of it. Have a 3-year plan, have a 7 to 10-year plan. And, we're not talking about, decades and decades and decades to totally, change your outlook on life and travel and everything else. And you can do that through real estate if you do it right. And then one of the ways you do it right is to educate yourself.
Yes. Yeah.
So on that note, I really want to dive into the real estate gurus that are out there, because I'm pretty sure you and I share a fairly similar opinion of them. I've been to some of the Rich Dad seminars. I've been to some of the other big names in the real estate industry. And I know in your bio, you actually wrote that you would sit there during these seminars and think, can you just cut to the chase and tell me what I need to find deals and to make money in real estate? And there is a lot of fluff out there, and there's a lot of people charging a lot of money for that fluff. And so I would love to hear your perspective on that and how some of your training and stuff differs.
Yeah. So I get the whole mindset, motivation, putting yourself in a positive space. I completely understand that, but I can do that on YouTube when I wake up in the morning very easily, free videos, whatever. But I took the $25,000 guru course, which I'm sure now is like 60,000 because I'm old. So that was a while ago. And I sat in a 3-hour class where they gave me a half an hour of content. And the other 2.5 hours was them talking about themselves and their life and all their experiences and fluffing me up and giving me all this hype and motivation to give me 30 minutes of actionable content. So Lazy Girl REI, my coaching program stemmed from, I'm lazy and I don't have time for this. Like, I don't have time to be sitting in a 3-hour class where you're going to give me, just tell me what part you're giving the content and I'll come in for those 30 minutes and then I'll go do stuff because I'm an action taker. And you have to do things. Like, you don't need all the fluffy things. You just need to take action. So, and I also think a lot of people, like I tell people all the time, if you see me on YouTube and you think you can learn from me, great. If I'm too expensive for you, great. That's what free YouTube is for. And then people will call me and ask me about like coaching and ask me about joining my coaching program. And I'm the worst salesperson ever. Cause I'm like, if you see what I give on YouTube and how much of a go-giver I am, I'm that times 100 with my students. And like, if you like that, great. If you want to join, great. But that's not how I make my money. So I don't care. Like, I'm just here to give back. Whereas I think a lot of like the big gurus, that's how they make their money, is through their coaching. I'm like, this is not my primary focus. I do not want to be the biggest coach in the world and be on stage and doing all the coaching things. I want to keep buying real estate, perfect my real estate businesses, buy bigger and bigger and bigger, and I make my money in real estate. Like, that's actually what I do on a daily basis. This is just my way of giving back. So when people talk to me, I'm like, you can join, great. You don't have to. I really don't care. That's one less student. Like, I don't care. It's not how I make my money.
So while we're on the topic, tell people where they can find more information about your training and coaching programs.
aprilcrossley.us. Yeah.
And then Lazy Girl REI.
Lazy Girl REI. Yep.
And on YouTube, it's
April Crossley.
Okay. That's Crossley, right?
Yep. You got it. Yeah.
So yeah, I agree. I have sat through some of these seminars. I've spoken to many of these, gurus and find myself wondering, well, if you're doing seminars every week, when are you actually having all the success in real estate? Yeah. And I've had people ask me, hey, will you mentor me, coach me? And I'm like, I don't have time. I'm running a real estate brokerage or property management company, doing my own investing. When would I possibly have time to coach? Now, that being said, we give away a lot of free educational content on our YouTube channel and our podcast. And so I just point people there. I'm like, you don't have to pay me. I give it away. But I understand there are people that need the structure. They need the classroom. Yes. They need somebody over their shoulder, tapping them on the hand with the ruler. And that's certainly out there if you need it. But the information is also similar. Everybody should be teaching you roughly the same stuff. They're all the same formulas. They're all the math is all the same. You can learn it anywhere. You just have to find a system or a coach or a mentor or a teacher who clicks with you. And that's really the secret. Because what they're really there for is support when you're scared to death. Like, my students now will be like, hey, I'm closing on this deal. I have a private money lender, but I've never done this before. And my private money lender's never done this before. And I'm like, I'm scared to death. Like, how can you get on the phone with us and tell us, like, how do walk me through this? Walk me through the paperwork. What questions should I ask? So it's in that moment of, I said to one of my students the other day, I'm like, it's like you and I are in a plane and I'm pretty much just going to kick you right out of the plane. So you're either going to build your parachute or you're not, because you're making excuses for not taking the next step. And I've even said to students, like, buy the deal or I'm going to buy the deal. And I would never go around one of my students and doing that, but it's my way of telling them, like, this is a good deal, but you're talking yourself out of it, making every excuse under the sun because you're scared to death, which is normal. But I'm telling you, buy the deal or I'm going to find someone to buy the deal. And then you'll get a wholesale fee out of it. And that's it. So analysis paralysis. I joke all the time that I'm on a mission to cure analysis paralysis. We have We have a page on our website. You can go to 5simpleformulas.com and it'll teach you 5 really easy formulas that you really need to understand to analyze real estate deals. And it's math that we learned in like middle school. It's addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. It's not hard. And it's just being willing to sit down and really understand the formulas and the math that go into real estate. Other than that, and frankly, you don't have to do the math. You can plug it into a spreadsheet or a calculator. It's just about collecting accurate income and expenses. And that's really all it boils down to.
Yep.
But yeah, analysis paralysis. And I've been there just a couple months ago. I was at a real estate showing and we were standing out by the street afterwards talking about it. And the other agent came out and said, hey, he just wanted me to tell you that he's willing to offer seller financing on this deal at 80% LTV and 4% interest. And he walked away. I said, if you don't buy this today, I will. Right. Or I know somebody, I know 10 other people who will, but don't let this slip through your hands because you're afraid of analyzing it or you can't see, through the vision. So yeah, that does happen all the time. And I've seen people walk away from deals that just pained me. But in most cases, I had a backup buyer to like, hey, these people are canceling, but they shouldn't. Do you want to buy it? So I just end up selling it to somebody else, or in some cases, I would do it myself if that didn't work out. So yeah, that's a great point. If your coach or your mentor or your teacher is telling you, look, buy it. If you don't, I will. That should be a pretty strong indication that it's a good deal. But you also have to have that level of trust and understanding. So
yeah.
You're a fan of, you talked a little bit about hard money and lenders, and you're a fan of saying, I have never purchased a deal with my own money. So walk us through how you've structured some of your deals, how our listeners might learn how to structure some deals. You know, if you're not sitting on $100 or $200 or $500,000 cash, how do you jump into real estate investing?
Yeah. And it's interesting. Everyone takes their own path and there's so many different ways you can do real estate, so many different ways, and people have to do what's a fit for them. In the beginning, I had no money at all. So when a wholesaler brought me a deal and I'm in the midst of taking all these guru courses and I'm like, I'm pretty sure this is a deal. Like you said, with your 5 simple formulas, I'm like, this is just penciling out as a deal and we should buy it. So I go to my then boyfriend, now husband, and I'm like, hey, this guy has this deal and like, I think we should buy it. And the guy didn't want to rehab it because he had no money. He's like, I can't buy it because I have no money. So I just want to wholesale it. So I took it to my husband. He's like, okay, but we have no money to buy it either. I'm like, I know, but I want to buy it. Like, I don't care. I want to buy it. So let's figure that out. So he actually went to his real estate office. He was doing like real estate part-time at the time, I think. And he went to his real estate office to someone that he knew that was a house flipper in the area and was like, hey, my girlfriend has this deal. We think it's a deal, but we just don't know what to do with it because we don't have any money. And that guy was like, oh, it's a great deal. Do you want to partner on it? And he was like, sure. And he's like, if you guys put in sweat equity, I'll bring all the money for everything. You don't have to worry about bringing any money. And then we'll split the profit at the end, but you need to like rip out carpet, paint. Well, when you're new like that, it's like, whatever, like absolutely, I'll do whatever it takes. I'll go work all day and then work all night at the project. So we bought this deal. And then when we resold it in the end, I noticed that someone else was getting money, was getting a check. That wasn't the person I was partnered with. And it was a private money lender. So we ended up meeting this private money lender. So that was my first introduction to private money. Then that private money lender was like, hey, I have more money. You guys did a great job on this project. This guy's not keeping my funds busy enough. If you come across more deals, I want to lend you money. So we were like, okay, well now I'm like, find deals.
Now you have no excuse.
Find deals. Yeah. So since then, I always did the BRRRR strategy, like bought cash with private money, did a cash out refinance with a bank. And then either that or purchased on seller finance or partnered with someone that had money or was bringing some aspect of the deal. So I'm huge on like joint venture partnerships and using private money and using the BRRRR strategy. I now to date did put 25% down. Well, we bought our mobile home park with a partner and we put part of that money down and we bought an 8 unit and put 25% down. So the 8 unit was the first time I ever put 25% down because I was at a point in my life where I'm like, well, I have this money liquid. Let's just do this and put it down. It was the worst experience of my life. Like I'm not a real estate agent. I'm not a broker. I strictly do the investing side. So when you show me all the paperwork that goes along with putting 25% down, financing with a bank and closing with a bank, it completely baffles me. And people don't understand that. Friends of mine that are regular house buyers or selling houses will ask me questions. I'm like, don't ask me, because I'm not in your world. This is two different worlds. I don't understand any of this paperwork, and there's so much paperwork, and everything takes weeks and weeks to close. And I'm like, why can't we close 5 days from now? Like, I don't understand. So to me, it's very frustrating, because that's not a world I come from. And now I still borrow private money for flips and wholesales, because I reserve my liquid capital to do my own private lending.
Sure.
So I'm borrowing from private lenders, but I'm also using my own liquid capital to lend to other people. So there's constantly just money like in and out, in and out, in and out, but it's all growing wealth for someone. So either I'm helping my private lenders grow wealth, or I'm putting my money out there to grow wealth, and also helping another flipper grow wealth, whatever the case may be.
And that's such a great point, that so many people are scared to use private lenders or hard money because they don't understand it. They think it's difficult. But if you've ever bought a house and signed that mountain of paperwork at the closing table,
it's so terrible.
It is painful. It takes 6 weeks. They want every bank statement from every bank account you ever had, and your taxes for it is so painful. I hate dealing with, and some of my best friends are mortgage brokers, so don't think that's the wrong way, but I hate dealing with mortgage underwriting. It's such a painful process. Conversely, if I'm buying something with hard money, it literally just takes a phone call. Hey, I'm going to buy this house. Closing's next Friday. Do you have like 150K I can borrow? Yeah. Okay. If the deal makes sense and I know who you are and trust you, it's as easy as that. All right. I'll send you the wiring instructions probably Wednesday or Thursday. And that's it. You sign some paperwork and it's such a quick, easy process. And it's the refinance at the back end that is painful. But if you're sitting at home and you want to get into flipping or learn more about the BRRRR method, we actually did a podcast episode and a YouTube video about this. I think it was in December or January. So you can look back through our episodes. We did a deep dive on the BRRRR strategy with 2 case studies, one on a single family, one on a multifamily. But so much of that same process is the exact same for a flipper. It's just you sell it instead of refinancing. And so you can learn a lot. I'm sure April has some resources on that as well. And on that note, April, you have some great resources available on your website for like ridiculously cheap money. You have a deal analyzer spreadsheet. You have a marketing tracker. Tell us a little bit about those. What are they? How do they work? How does somebody find them and buy them or whatever?
Yeah. So I'm a very pen and paper kind of person. I still am. And I don't really get into like fancy spreadsheets and stuff, but a friend of mine created a deal analyzer that's just, he basically took what I was doing on paper and put it in Excel. So it has like a tab for rehab costs, a tab that summarizes the deal, a tab on if you're going to flip this, here's what your profit is going to be. And if you're going to do the BRRRR strategy, here's how much it's going to cash flow per month. So it's easy plug and play and calculates things for you. It's super nice. And then the marketing tracker is kind of for people that are really sending out their own marketing and trying to track how is it performing. Because, you hear about sending out mail, postcards, doing cold calling, but you really have to track what's working. So it's basically a spreadsheet that weekly you're putting in, like, I'm sending this amount of mail, I got this many calls, what percentage is that? And did I close any deals from it? And then what is my cost per deal based on the amount of marketing that I'm sending out? So it's kind of for people that have been doing it a while. I don't think it's anything that's necessary if you're just starting out, but if you've been doing marketing for a while and you're not tracking what's working and what's not working, it's something that you really need. That was a mistake I made in the beginning. I was sending out all kinds of marketing, but not tracking like what letter is working, what zip code is performing the best, and kind of learned the hard way. I better start tracking this stuff so I can maximize my return.
And that I can imagine that being such a powerful tool, because if you spend $5 on marketing and you make $7 in return, well, what should you do? Spend $10 on marketing and then you make $14. It's so obvious, but you'll never know if you're not tracking it.
Right.
And then I want to go back to your first one, the deal analyzer spreadsheet, because I know I said how easy it was to get hard money, but that's for you and me after we've done dozens of deals with the same lender. If you're new and you're sitting at home and you want to do a hard money deal, the money's out there. You can find a lender. You can find 10 lenders today. but don't take them your analysis on a napkin or a piece of notebook paper. Use one of these tools, make it a nice clean spreadsheet with realistic numbers, realistic projections, show them that you've done the math, and it becomes a no-brainer for the lender. They can read the spreadsheet just like you can. And if they see some good money on the bottom line and they see realistic inputs, they're going to say, yeah, sure, I'll loan you the money. If it doesn't work out, the worst thing that's going to happen is I'm going to own this property and I'll loan you on the next one. Right. And so don't be fearful of hard money. Just learn the metrics, and the funding part becomes easy.
Yeah. And we put a comps tab on that spreadsheet so people can easily like fill in their comps and a private lender. It's what I use. So like if borrowers come to me and like, hey, I need a private loan on this flip, I'm like, fill out my deal analyzer spreadsheet. Because what used to happen is they would just send me a bunch of emails with a bunch of different information. And then they'd send me pages and pages of comps from their real estate agent. And I'm like, I am not looking through all of this. I have no time. I'm the private lender, the passive investor, which means I don't want to spend time on this kind of stuff. I just want to quickly look at it, make a decision, and send you funds. So it's the deal analyzer spreadsheet is basically also doubles as like a private money lender package. It's like everything all in one place. It's like a business
plan. Yeah.
Yeah, to send to the private lender, and then they can quickly make a decision about your deal.
And what I love is even if somebody doesn't want to borrow money from you, they don't want to do coaching with you, they don't even want to talk to you, they can go on your website, they can buy this tool for, you're giving it away for what, like $99 or something?
It's super cheap. Yeah. And we have a whole section on our website of just like free resources.
Right.
Like here's everything.
So there's plenty of free stuff, but you can literally get a business plan for flipping houses or doing the BRRRR method on properties. If you check out these tools, because they'll just, fast forward your real estate investing. So I know we're both limited on time. I'm going to close with a couple of questions that I love to ask everybody, because I love the varying perspectives that we all bring to the table. And the first one is, where do you see the real estate market going in the next 2 to 5 to 10 years? And obviously you have a much different perspective on this, because a lot of our listeners and our team here are focused on Florida, but that doesn't mean they don't live in Pennsylvania. It doesn't mean they're not interested in investing in other markets. So I'd love to hear what's going on up there and what you see, happening in the next 2 to 5 to 10 years, throughout the country.
Yeah. So it's really interesting because I kind of see both. I see both markets, because I co-GP'd on a 167 unit and also a 216 unit in Bradenton, Florida. So very familiar with the Southwest Florida market. So I raised capital for those deals. And when I took it to my investors, they were like, this cap rate's just so low. And like, I just do not see rents going up that high. And a lot of my passive investors are from up north. And I have family in the Southwest Florida market. I'm there a lot. I've seen it and what it's done over the years, and I know it. And I'm like, okay, no matter what I say to you, you're just kind of not going to understand, and that's fine. And in like year one, we're outperforming what we were projecting in year 3 as far as rents, because people tend to not look at things on a micro level when they're looking at a market. They think Pennsylvania, Florida, rents aren't rising that fast in Pennsylvania, incomes aren't rising that fast. Yeah, but you also don't have Florida has a ton of businesses coming in. You have like something crazy, like 1,000 people per day moving there. We don't have that in Pennsylvania. So I try to explain that to my passive investors. These are 2 completely different markets. So I guess the first thing I want to say is you have to look at what's going on in your market with the experts in your market. And second, I wish I could say, this is what's going to happen over the next 2, 5, or 10 years in the United States in real estate. I don't think anyone can say. We're in the weirdest time right now, in the most falsely propped up stock market ever. And like everything's just so foreign that I really just tell people, focus on what's going on in your market you're investing in, hyper focus on that. And you can buy in any market. One of my great regrets looking back is I've been investing since 2004. So everyone talks about 06, 07, 08. I was working another job then that was like very time consuming and high level and took a lot of my time. And my husband was a realtor. So he saw it coming. So in 06, 07, he was like, we're not buying anything, nothing. We are not buying. We're just taking a break from real estate. I wish I wouldn't have taken a break, because now looking back in hindsight, we're in one of the craziest markets ever right now, because inventory is so low. Demand for rentals is so high. It's pushing rents like crazy. Deals are hard to find, but not impossible. Okay. And I think you have to shift your strategy with some things, but you can find deals in any market. So if your strategy across the board is to like be conservative, always looking for deals every single day or every single week, I think you just keep buying. I don't think personally there's anything better to buy than real estate.
Absolutely. And I can attest to that. Even here in Florida, everybody knows, 06, 07 was the peak. And then 08, there was this crash or whatever. Well, I bought my primary residence in 2006, right at the peak. And yes, the value diminished in the few years after that, but it wasn't for sale. So what did we care?
Right.
And now here we are, 15 years later, and it has doubled in value since 2006. And so you're right. It just because, even if you bought in 06, 07, you're still in great shape now. Now, if you were cognizant enough to buy in 09 and 2010 and 11, when it was in that dip, you'd be sitting even prettier. So yeah, it's no surprise. It's no secret that the real estate market works in cycles. It always has, and it always will. So you're absolutely right that just follow the fundamentals. And especially if you're going to buy and hold something for 5-10 years, the market cycles don't really matter that much. Is it cash flow positive? Are you covering your debt service? Do you have, your expenses covered? Then does it matter? Yeah. Wait for the market to come back up. And you're right. It's a strange market right now. So it's really hard to make predictions, but especially here in Florida, we're seeing such tremendous population growth that it comes down to really, really simple economics. Until they build enough housing units to meet demand, prices really can't go down, barring, World War III or whatever. But yeah, just be smart about it, and you can buy and sell in any market. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
So my other question is for our listeners. They're sitting at home, they're fired up, they want to invest in real estate, or they want to grow their portfolio. What's one word of wisdom, one tip, trick, or one piece of advice that you wish you had given yourself 10, 15, 20 years ago?
Yeah, I wish I would have intentionally put myself in rooms with people that were thinking bigger than me. And I wasn't consciously doing that. And since I've been consciously doing that, my businesses have grown like tremendously. And I've just become a better leader and a better business owner. I really think like I belong to mastermind groups currently. And I just really think like sitting in a room with people that think bigger and people from all over the nation, like even if I had family living in Southwest Florida, I might not know about Southwest Florida and everything that's going on all over the nation, but now I can talk to other people in other markets and get a different perspective and know the way it is here in Pennsylvania is not the way. And what's working for this person in Texas won't work with all my zoning and code restrictions in Pennsylvania, but I can go to Texas and partner with them and make that happen, or I can come to Knoxville, Tennessee and make that happen. So I really just think partnering has been huge for me, and just sitting in rooms with people that are quite frankly intimidating, like that make me want to cry because I'm like, wow, I'm so dumb. And these people are so smart. So it's very uncomfortable, but now I try to put myself in those rooms. As someone asked me to go to a conference like 2 weeks from now, and it's like a guru type person that's speaking, and it's just not something I have interested in. I'm just like, I don't really want to go because the room will not intimidate me. And I need to be in rooms with people where I feel intimidated. Yeah, because they're that smart.
I love that. Put yourself in rooms where you feel intimidated. That's a great way to put it. As you know, we had Rod Khleif on the show a few weeks ago, and one of the things he said was, you are who you surround yourself with. And if you show me the 3 people you spend the most time with, I can tell you pretty much exactly what you have going on. And so that's a great mindset. Don't be afraid to build a team around you that's smarter than you are, and don't be afraid to put yourself in a room where you feel intimidated. I think those are great words of wisdom to sort of close on. And so with that, tell everybody one more time where they can find you if they want to learn more, and anything else that you want to share.
Sure. Yeah. You can find out more at aprilcrossley.us and follow us on YouTube at April Crossley.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for being on today.
Thank
I
you,
sincerely
Jeff.
appreciate it. This was a great discussion, just like I expected it to be. And hopefully we can do it again someday.
Look forward to it. Thank you. Have a great day.
You too.
Thank you for listening to the Copeland Morgan Media Real Estate Podcast. As you can imagine, producing this great educational content takes a lot of effort and commitment on our part. We only ask one thing in return. Please subscribe to our podcast using your favorite podcast app or by visiting copelandmorgan.com/podcast. And remember, there's no greater compliment than referring us to a friend or colleague. Until next time, I'm Jeff Copeland.